Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another installment of the GhostComms podcast. I'm your host, Jatmon, joined by my co-host, Vishal. And today we have a professional caster and analyst who has worked for Dreamhack, the official Fortnite broadcast, and more recently, the Olympics. We have SomebodysGun with us here today. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, first kind of get the formalities out of the way. Where did you grow up? What did your childhood look like? Extracurriculars that you were involved in, and then how was gaming a part of that?
So I grew up in New Jersey on the Jersey Shore. A little fist bumping.
Yeah.
Nice,
Not
nice.
that kind of Jersey Shore though. Grew up near Asbury Park and kind of was always a beach kid. Worked on the beach. Went to the beach whenever I could during the summers and enjoyed it. And then from a young age, I always liked playing video games. My dad kind of started me off playing chess with him, and then we got a PS2 eventually, and then we would play Madden together. And then at some point I wanted to play my own games, so like Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, those are kind of the first few. And eventually I was just better than my dad at playing Madden, so it wasn't any fun anymore.
That's been a common
always the
theme.
dad.
Like most of the
always
guests
the
we've had on, pros, managers, everyone has kind of inherited that from a dad and uncle, usually a male role in their life, which just is a cool pattern that we've found. But
Yeah, he wasn't a big gamer, but he loved football.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the one thing, I like playing video games. He liked playing Madden. And understood at least how it worked. He didn't necessarily understand how games worked, but he understood how football worked.
Right. Did you play sports growing up? Did you play football or? Okay.
Yeah, so I played baseball pretty much my whole young life up through senior year of high school, and then decided it wasn't for me after that. Had a chance to go play D3, maybe some bad D2 schools. But I'd much rather, I had the grades, the extracurriculars, all that stuff to go to a big D1 school. So I went to NC State in North Carolina and enjoyed the heck out of that. But always kind of wanted to play video games again. It just kind of took a backseat during college because I don't know if either of you guys have done it yet. But
I'm in school.
College is a heck of a lot of fun.
Entering uni, not college because I'm Canadian, but yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm going into my senior year of college. So I get that for sure. How did Fort come into the scene? How did that kind of come to be for you, and what got you interested in it? What got you hooked? Whatever.
So I've always kind of been a competitive gamer. I never really liked playing solo games or kind of co-op games. I always liked to beat people. That's been my passion as far as gaming. So in COD, I used to play game battles all the time, and I was too young to win actual money. So I'd win Xbox points or a headset, a controller, stuff like that. Because I wouldn't send a child, $300, and there wasn't even PayPal or anything. There probably was, but it was early.
Yep.
And then during college, I didn't really play a ton. Played around my friends, and Clash of Clans was actually the one big game that I loved playing all the time. So I got really good at that. What'd you say?
Everybody had a stage of Clash of Clans.
Dude, I played it from sophomore year of high school all the way through college, and then finally gave it up.
I played I think 2nd to 6th grade. I think I was actually that addicted.
Okay.
It was just a flex to be good, I think.
Yeah, dude, it was.
Yeah.
We had a top 10 clan in the US at one point. We were just steamrolling people. It was awesome. So I always had that passion, but then there wasn't a ton of time. Plus I didn't have or I did have an Xbox in my room, but my roommates played it more than I did. And then after college, got a real job, decided, okay, let's buy a PlayStation. So I bought a PlayStation, played some Fort at my buddy's place a couple of times, and I was like, all right, I got to actually try this. This was fun the first few times because I hadn't gotten a win yet. So I knew there needed to be a win before I was able to put this down. And from that point on, you start playing in those early days. Pretty much as soon season 2. Chapter 1 was when I really first started playing.
What I mean, obviously, I think most people it was the mechanics of building and editing probably kept you. I mean, and just that the the time that we all kind of make a nostalgic dream at this point of like that early time of, you know, it was flexing wins, and it was, you know, how many wins can you get in a row or in a day, or, you know, all that stuff. What kind of transition into content creation in Fort for you? Like, when did that start?
So I was always better than my friends, and I was really good at explaining to them like how I saw the game, which then helped them. And my one buddy Tyler, shouts out to Tyler. I don't know if he knows that he did this, but he's always telling me like, dude, you should make videos, like you should make YouTube stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, I don't really like, I had a little laptop. Yeah. And definitely was not going to be able to run Fortnite. I was playing on my PlayStation. Yeah. And eventually I started getting a little fed up with my first job out of school. I was there for about a year and a half, and I asked for a promotion. They were like, dude, nah, we're not doing that to you. So I was making below the average for that position in my area. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to find something else. I found a little side gig to start writing for a website called Daily Esports. It's part of like the We Are Gaming, or what is it? Enthusiast Gaming, I think. Okay. That owns like Luminosity and a couple other companies.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like my first start, and I was covering Fortnite because I love the game and wasn't good enough to compete. I knew a PlayStation wasn't going to cut it if I actually wanted to compete. Yep. Right. So I started writing on the side, and every paycheck I got sat. And once I got like $1,200, I was like, all right, now I can finally buy a PC and start playing a little more competitively. And then the first thing I did was start recording videos. Terrible. Please don't go watch those first few. But that was like my introduction. I'm not taking anything down.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important part of the process. Yeah, you know, I mean,
I don't see why people like private videos, like unlisting, cool, but privating is. I think it's better just to keep them out. Just be like, oh, look at my progress.
I see stream clips of me from 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I get such bad secondhand embarrassment for my old self. Like, how was I like willingly doing this every day in front of people? But I mean, it's an important part of the process. You have to go through that. I mean, everyone. You know, you hear it said all the time, like everyone starts at zero, but I think being able to track your own zero and then being able to use that as the reference point of like, this is what I built off of that, and this is how much I've learned in X amount of time. And you can do that with the game too. I'll do that with like clips of mine. I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought this was a clip 6 months ago, and like now I'm embarrassed. You know, I would be embarrassed if I like clipped this today. And that's, you know, you get to see your progression of self in that, and I think there's a real sense of accomplishment that you can get and really be proud of yourself, and that's an important thing. I mean, always keep striving for more, but it really take a moment sometimes to go, wow, I've made it this far, you know, already, and I built something for myself. So your videos were always educational, like you were always kind of doing the analyst thing. How did that first like analyst gig come in? How did you start casting? Like, how did you kind of make the transition into what you're doing now?
So pretty much came from a comment on a YouTube video. Somebody commented like, hey, my like Instagram team is running a like 25 person Fortnite tournament. Do you want to commentate on it? And I was like, sure. You know, like I had no idea. I was still a pretty small content creator and had never casted before. Like that just wasn't something that I really wanted to do. Yeah. And I was still working full time. So at that point I was like, sure, why not? Like, doesn't matter. It wasn't paid. I did it, had some fun. They're like, hey, we're running another one next week. You want to do that? Sure. And then from that point, I kind of got like that itch. I don't think I was good by any means, but I was someone that had done it before, which was more than a lot of people could say. Right. And then it was, I forgot my first paid gig. It was either like Toronto Fortnite, Esports Arena, or there might have been something else. But like some company reached out to me and was like, hey, you know, do you want to commentate on this? And they're like, oh, it's $20 an hour. I was like, what? $20 an hour? Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
20 USD or 20 CAD?
20 USD.
Jesus Christ, that's so much in CAD. That's so much in CAD.
So like that was when I was like, oh, okay, like this could actually be something I could pursue. And then the next one came and it was like $50 an hour. And then it started like piling up to the summers are normally crazy. So like in my space, a lot of work happens in the summer. Then there's like a little break towards the end of the summer when kids start going back to school. And then like Thanksgiving to Christmas, that area, like when advertisers are trying to get in front of people, they throw a lot of money at it again. So that's kind of how I've learned it to be. At that time, it was just like summer, got a bunch of gigs, and then decided, okay, I'll keep doing this. And then it was like October 2021, I want to say, was when I did my first Dreamhack show. So they were doing the Dreamhack online opens, and they'd been happening for, I don't know, probably since that February. So like almost all year. And then that was when I was like, oh crap, like this could be a real job, because they paid me way more than anybody else had, and I didn't even have to negotiate with them. So that was the realization of like, okay, this might actually be more than just something I do for fun.
So you heavily enjoyed it while also being able to make sufficient funds off of it.
Yeah, well, at first it was just like a side gig I would do after work, because I was working a 9 to 5. I worked 5 years doing tech sales for different startups here in Raleigh, and then just never really enjoyed it, and plus got laid off twice during COVID. So was it? I gave you a push.
Right. Was it something like you would get home from work and you were excited, like if someone gave you an opportunity like right away, or was it something just like if it happened, it happened?
What do you mean by that?
So let's say you got, like you said, you got home from work and then it was like a side gig, right? So it was like on your off hours from work, right? So would it be something where when you get home, you're like, oh, now I got a gig to do? Like, were you excited about it before starting it? Or was it something like someone DMs you, you're like, oh, now it's time to go do this?
Oh, 100%. I'm still get excited about gigs. Depends though. Like, if I'm being honest with you guys, Zero Build is my favorite, but like traditional Fortnite stuff is my love and passion. But if I'm doing something at this point in my career, and then at that point in my career it was kind of anything that came my way, I'd be like, yes, this is super exciting. Like I get another opportunity to talk about Fortnite. And then even now, like if I'm doing something and I say yes to it, it's like something I want to do. I'm gonna enjoy it.
Nice.
When, like, what was you worked on the broadcast, the official broadcast?
Yes.
How was that experience? I mean, what was that like? How did they reach out to you, and then how was like that experience from your perspective?
So I started trying to get on the broadcast after about 6 months or so on Dreamhack. You know, I started poking around, trying to see who was in charge, sending them a nice email like, hey, I'm Taylor, love to introduce myself, hop on a call. And it never really seemed to get anywhere. So it was probably about a year of just like saying hello, but at least you're putting yourself on the map, regardless of whether or not it happened. Like, I got my name in front of somebody and was able to introduce myself. And that's a huge step, whether or not people think it is or not. And then after that, I was told a couple of times, like, oh, you know, we'll get you on in the future. We'd love to have you on, blah, blah, blah. And as you guys probably know, there's quite some volatility with casters and analysts on the main broadcast. So I knew eventually it would happen. I just didn't know when. And then I think Kelly Link had to go to like a wedding or a bachelorette party, something like that, in Chapter 2, Season 8. And so then they needed someone to fill for semifinals. It was like 2 weeks, I think. Or no. It was when semifinals was 3 days. So they did like those 3 days of semis. So I got to do all three of those on NA West, and that was like my first introduction. Which was all right. You know, you're doing West. It's semifinals with the surgery format. It's not the best experience, but I loved it, right? It was the first time I got to do it. It didn't matter. Looking back on it now, it's like, okay, who cares what you did? But that at the time was the coolest thing in the world.
I mean, it's your first big gig. Like, that's the broadcast.
It's like, the official broadcast.
Like, the thing that scares me the most, and we've had this like with previous podcast recordings. Like, one podcast recording we did was like, we did it while someone was live, and that person had like 4K viewers just watching, and that both of us were like, we didn't show it on the podcast, but after we were like, yo, We just did that in front of 4K people. Like it's the same thing for you. Like at the time, the Fortnite broadcast, or even still, Fortnite broadcast has thousands of viewers. So that just knowing people are watching you like that, it's so nerve wracking, but at the same time, it's so exciting.
Well,
so kind of like it's an
too,
adrenaline push.
That would have been like I mean, a lot of people consider that to be like the peak or their favorite time of like competitive Fortnite, and like so that I mean that is it's like you're getting in right at like what the top. I mean, people would say Chapter 2, Season 7 and 8, like the Alien season, and then the Cube season were like two of their favorites, and so I mean, that's not insignificant, but working for that's like the top you can get as a Fortnite caster is you're on the official broadcast, albeit on a region that people kind of fall asleep to with the normal broadcaster or whatever, but that's it's certainly not insignificant, and like Vishal said, we've had those experiences. I can speak to that as a streamer and creator as well. Every time you get that big raid, you see that view count for the first time, like there is something that's in you that's like, wow, that's real. Like I'm experiencing this right now. And you talk to different people. I mean, I remember the first time I like talked to Booga, and it's like, whoa, that's Booga. Like that's the guy. Like and then you become accustomed to it over time. But that first experience is really something.
Well, on top of that, I'd done Dreamhacks, and I'd done it for like a year and a half at that point, or no, a year and a month, I think, because it was November when I did my first FNCS, and I'd been doing Dreamhack for a year before that. So you were nervous at first for the Dreamhacks, and then you get like 2 or 3 under your belt. You're like, all right, cool. Now I know what I'm doing. Can get a little more comfortable, but still, it's not a regular job. You're doing it maybe once a month, at most twice.
Right.
So that you get 3 hours to essentially show yourself as what your job is, and that kind of gets in your mind. And for that first FNCS, I'll tell you guys little thing I learned. So I was nervous, definitely nervous, not gonna lie. But what made it worse is I drank a cup of coffee like right before we went live. So the adrenaline and the anxiety, and then also the caffeine, like it's 8 o'clock at night that you're going live for a show. My heart's racing. I start sweating, and once you start talking, it's fine, right? Like once you get going, you know what you're talking about. But that 5 to 10 minutes before a show, at least for me, is like, holy, like what is going on? I'm really about to do this, and you're sitting there. Because at that time it was at home, so I'm literally sitting just in this room, staring at a camera and a computer, like hyping this up to be way more than I should.
So like a scale of nervousness before. Let's say that was a 10, because again, the coffee, all that, whatever it is. But like now, if you were to host an event, let's say you were to host a grand finals in this current meta or this current like time frame. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would your nervousness do you think would be, at least? Because I'd assume there's still some type of nervousness there. Because again, you're still broadcasting.
You're still performing. I mean, you're still in front
like you
of the
have to.
camera.
It's kind of like stage fright. It's like stage fright. Like especially to start, it's stage fright. Like on that scale, what would you say it is now, at least?
So I think now for online broadcasts, it's probably like a 1.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing stuff from home, I'm literally sitting at my computer, staring at a camera, looking at you guys. Like no one can even say anything to me besides production if I mess something up. But like something like the Olympics, right? I've gotten so much better at channeling that and kind of thinking through what the first couple of things I might say are, because that's really where you mess up. And then when you do mess up, you get in your head even more. Like I could say something and nobody realizes I messed something up. Like no person, not even the people I'm working with, know that I like stumbled. But then you get in your head, and this happened to me on my first studio broadcast for FNCS. We were closing out the like first opening segment for FNCS, and I said something, and I like stumbled on my words. I couldn't get the right words out, and then all of a sudden, I'm all in my head. It's game over. So like, again, we probably hit that 10 for the first online FNCS. And then when we get to studio, that's a whole nother game. And that's probably a 10 once again, getting there.
I was just about to bring up the Olympic event. You got to do not only, an incredible Fortnite event, but you got to be a part of history in the first Olympic esport event. I mean, how did that feel? I mean, what was the experience like? I mean, I was looking through your Twitter, obviously doing some research for this, and like, you know, I saw like your video. You were just kind of on a high. You're ecstatic. You're like, I can't get this smile off my face. Like, you know, I mean, and understandably so. I mean, like, what was that moment like for you? And did you really like? Did you take a second to kind of like, oh, this is this is where I've gotten to. Like, this is my life.
So I've always been a fan of the Olympics, and like every year, whether it be summer or winter, like I'm tuning in watching events. I love sports. I'm a big NFL guy. Love seeing competition, and the Olympics are so cool to me because you get to see all these like random sports that are never on TV. Not only that, you get to see the best of the best, and like country versus country. So it's like such a cool format.
It's so intense for some reason.
Oh,
because even if you don't watch the sport, it's so intense. Even if you don't know what's going on.
I never care about diving, but once the Olympics come around, it's USA all the way. I make sure there's no water droplets coming out. Like, you know, it is. You get a sense of like pride and nationalism and competition about. I mean, it's very weird because like you never watch any of those things, you know, or shot.
Especially if you're watching the Olympics with friends, I feel like it's so much more intense because especially if they know what's going on. You're like, oh my god, it's like someone your heart's racing even though you don't know what's exactly going on. Right. So I mean. So you did the Olympic event in Singapore. What was that type of process? Like how the first day, the second day, how was that? Like going there and all that.
Well, can I say one more thing about
go
ahead.
So huge fan of the Olympics, and I guess this will kind of answer your question as well. So I get an email. I'm at my in-laws, and I get an email like June 24th, Olympic Esports Week, Fortnite. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, that's not real.
Right.
I show my wife, and she's like, dude, you're going to the Olympics. Like, they just asked you to cast at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this might not be real, but, you know, I'm getting excited a little bit. The way I look at things is, especially with casting, you'll get hit up a lot to do stuff. Yeah. And then you don't always get contracted to do that. So let's say we're running a tournament. We may reach out to 5 casters when we only need 3 or 2. So then they kind of do that, knowing some people say no, or some people don't agree with the rates, whatever it may be. You know, it's good business to make sure you have multiple people. So I did that, and that was, I don't even know, maybe end of May, beginning of June. So not much before the event happened. And then they're like, all right, cool, thank you. Give us your rates. That's what we need to know, and then we'll get back to you. So it was probably 2 weeks before they got back to me. And then we're like, yeah, you know, we'd love to bring you on. Let's go for it. And I knew some of the other people that got hit up. So I was like, all right, yes, this is awesome. Found out I was working with Levin. And then
we love Levin.
We get to go. And it was just unbelievable. It was the longest plane ride I've ever been on. But the experience itself, being there, not just to be able to commentate. Like, I'm also a fan too. I'm sitting with a fan watching Gran Turismo and like, let's go. Just enjoying that. Street Fighter, got to meet some of the other commentators for 2K and Street Fighter. They were awesome people. So that's how it went. And you get there, and I just couldn't believe it because I think most people have kind of that imposter syndrome, and like I'm always telling my wife, like, you know, I'm not that great. She's like, shut up, you just casted the Olympics, like what else do you want to do to tell you that you're good at this? But it's still in my mind. I have work to do, and I'm not that good compared to other people.
There's always room for improvement though, if you put it that way. Like, I mean, for anything, that goes for anything though. Like, you can't, I mean,
it's better than the complacency, and we've talked about that with a lot of the kids in this scene. I mean, they're all young, usually immature, and I mean they develop that complacency, and you see that. I mean, you know, we've talked about Rex is a great example of that. You know, dominated West for a long time, and then you see him just kind of fall off. I mean, you know, he that last grand finals that he played, he, you know, didn't play basically the whole season. Like, he got to champs on the first night or whatever, and then didn't play and didn't touch the game, didn't scrim, didn't whatever, and then just played, you know, heats, made his first heat or whatever and qualified, and didn't play then until grands. And like you see, I think a complacency that develops, and they kind of get comfortable. Oh, well, I'm successful enough. I've made enough, or, you know, I'm good enough now. And I mean, my personal philosophy of life is just that doesn't work. I mean, it only gets you so far, and whatever that craft that you're honing is, there's always work to be done in that sense. So I think it's better that you have that imposter syndrome, arguably, than say like, oh, I'm the best and I don't need to, do anything to improve in what I'm doing. And I think that's something that the Fortnite community in general could learn, not just in the game sense, but in life. And that complacency is one of the enemies of greatness and progress and all of those things. But yeah, I mean, what, and this kind of, you can talk about the Olympics or kind of whatever, but what kind of, I think there's a big misconception because we had Lash. We had Caster Lash on, and even after he was kind of showing us, like he was preparing for, I think, the collegiate tournament that he was casting, and just showing us a lot of the work that went into that. I had no clue. So like, what kind of preparation goes into, like when you're doing an event or an FNCS or a Dreamhack or something of that nature?
So for me, it depends, and this is probably going to be not great to say out loud, but it depends on the event. Some I put in a ton of effort, like FNCS. I'm always putting in prep. During the week, I'm watching VODs, so that way something happens, and I'm like, okay, I knew that was going to happen. Cool, can recall back to when I saw that this team has a regular tendency to do these things. Boom. Yeah. And I used to do that for Dreamhacks, and I just watch a ton of Fortnite in general. Like even if I'm not doing a gig, like last night, I'm watching the Duo Cash Cup, just trying to get a feel for the meta, and I'm just a fan, right? Yeah. Just because this is my job doesn't mean I can't just enjoy the game and hang out and watch it. But for, let's say, like the Olympics, that's a whole different thing because we're playing a creative map that I didn't see until maybe a week before the event. So there's nothing I could do. I didn't know who the players were until, I was 2 days from getting on a plane. So it's like, you want to do stuff, and I always want to prepare and be ready. Yeah. But then when it comes down to it, like you're not always able to prepare anything. If it was the game, cool. I know I can figure out how the meta is. I can watch VODs. I can watch people's streams. But when it comes down to a creative map where I haven't seen it until a week before, I haven't even been able to play the map because it's not publicly released. And I'm just watching a video of the creator run through it once. Like that's all I had. So it was really good. The day before, Levin and I went down, chatted with all the players, and kind of talked with them as they prepped and ran through the map a bunch of times. So we were able to talk to them. We were able to see how the map played out, saw who was kind of the best going into the event. And that was huge. So that's a different kind of preparation that you can't necessarily put on paper, but is 100% necessary and more similar to what you would see from traditional sports where, you're going to an NFL game, you're about to go commentate on that. Well, you go talk to the coach, you talk to a couple players, you get a feel for what's going on. And that preparation, I think, is so much better than anything I could do online if you can get the right answers out of players, because sometimes players just shut down. They don't want to give you anything. Other times, you kind of push them, mess around a little bit, and just hang out, get to watch them in their natural state playing Fortnite. They're a lot more open and willing to talk about stuff.
I like that you brought up the overlap with sports and the similarities, because I think we hear that conversation a lot of like, oh, don't call it esports, don't call them athletes, whatever, like, and that's a different conversation I think that can be had and argued from different standpoints that I understand various arguments of. But in my experience, because I grew up multi-sport athlete, football, basketball, baseball, I played football from when I was 8 years old until my junior year of high school. That I only stopped because of a knee injury, but it was an extremely important part of my life, and there are many more similarities between esports and sports than there are differences. And I think that because I remember seeing a tweet of yours that was like, your dream one day would be to do an NFL event or broadcast or something of that nature, and I think I've seen a lot of that. We've talked to a lot of people where the overlap with sports is really strong, and that competitive nature, the organized, sense of it all, but just kind of, I think it's the same thing. It's finding something that you enjoy, that you commit yourself to getting better at, and the competitive spirit of that all. But like I see, and I see, but the industry's combining as well too. I mean, we've seen so many people that are working in esports now come from, NBA teams, NFL teams. They're working in these sports industries, sports franchises, and we're seeing overlap with that as well. Like, I mean, a company that I work for, I do like youth esports coaching, and their whole business model is building off of existing rec soccer teams. So I mean, there's this blending of the industries that I'm really seeing, and even like sports bars. Like I remember going into a Buffalo Wild Wings, and they had like a tablet with all of the options of the things that you could like request to be on the screens around. And it's always college basketball or football or different pro teams, and they had a whole esports section, and like Fortnite, CS:GO, all of that was included. And to see that like trickle down to that part of like the capitalist chain, where it's like it's beneficial for a Buffalo Wild Wings to be having that as an option. Enough people have said or expressed interest or whatever, is a really interesting thing. And I think we're seeing that. I mean, even with Dig's owners are, the same as the 76ers and things of that nature. We're seeing a real blending of these industries. And I think that's a good thing, because we're learning a lot, I think, as esports, as an industry, and we're seeing things more like that. And I even think like the production of lands that we've seen, starting to be more and more akin. I mean, Dreamhack Dallas, that CS:GO event, the women's finals, was crazy. I mean, that stadium is packed, and people are in there cheering like it's a sports game, and I just really love seeing that. But do you have any kind of thoughts or insight on what you've seen and kind of being a sports fan and an esports fan?
But I think there are a ton of parallels, and then there's a couple of huge differences.
Sure.
Like the similar things are, people are just fans. People love to watch this stuff. One of the big differences, though, with that is the audience for esports is so young versus traditional sports. You got that, dude with a beer gut that's going to go spend hundreds of dollars at a stadium crushing some $17 beers, and you're just not going to get a kid to be able to spend that at an esports event. So I think that's kind of one of the parallels that I see, is there's both like massive fandom, but at the same time you start to realize that like our generation, I guess, I don't know how old you guys are. I'm 28.
I'm 21 and he's 18. So
okay, so close enough.
Yeah.
But we've all grown up playing video games, so like as it goes on, we'll continue to watch that. I don't see myself ever stopping watching video games. Whereas like 40, 50-year-olds, they grew up watching sports, so then they just continue their entire life. So we're still in those early stages to get people into becoming fans that also have expendable income to support the games, the players, the orgs that we want to support. Because you don't have money, and you're not super helpful to an organization or a player if you can't help them in any way. So I think that's kind of one of the big parallels, and I think over time, like the people that are bought in early and the people that stick with it, even as like right now is kind of a terrible time for gaming. Well, it seems like everywhere, but those people that can make it through these like pitfalls will do really well. And then you look at baseball. Baseball was kind of a not terrible game, but wasn't the biggest game in the world. And then all of a sudden it starts to grow within the US. And then there's I forget what the first actual league was. I watched the Jackie Robinson movie. Great movie, by the way.
Yeah.
But you have that, and then you have like the Negro League going on the side, and it's creating this fandom between these two, like not competing, but parallel leagues.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they start to combine, and then you get superstars like Jackie Robinson coming into the game and bringing these two groups that you would never think would be rooting for the Brooklyn Dodgers, Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yeah.
I think we'll start to see some of that as time goes on. Now it's obviously not like a massive civil rights thing where players are coming in getting stuff thrown at them and beat up, but at the same time there is kind of like this massive wave that I think will come along as people get older and have the opportunity to become fans of things. And then we're kind of stabilizing now, because early esports, it was Call of Duty 4, and then we're playing the next Call of Duty, then we're playing the next Call of Duty. And now we have these games like CS:GO, Dota, League of Legends, and now Fortnite's been around. I mean, 5 years is a long time for video games.
Yeah.
So where they're stabilizing, you actually continue to create some fandom. So over time, I think it'll be awesome. And sports has that opportunity to drive people, to push people, and make people passionate, tell stories. I think one of the things that we fail most in esports is storytelling.
I agree.
Myself included, because I'm part of those people that do that. But we need to tell the stories of these players, because there's some freaking awesome stories behind the scenes of players that we just don't know about.
And it's funny that you bring that up, because that was something that was the motivation for what we're doing here. That was the podcast. Exactly. I mean, we both talked about Arab's brand risk podcast they used to do, and how that was massively impactful for me and my career. And like watching, Ron's episode, I think, is the one that I keep going back to.
Have you ever seen the podcast?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, like Ron's episode, where he's kind of pouring his heart out and being really vulnerable and real about who he is as a person, and really getting to know the human being under that name, and all of that. And it really impacted us. And we see that like Jumper and Paper's series as well, like that they were doing of their boot camp series. We've talked about a few times, because it addressed that same thing that you're talking about of it showed who they were as people. It showed, the experiences that they like, the things they like to eat, whatever it is. Like, you really get to feel, I understand this person on a deeper level, not just their name or their placements or, who they are in game, but just kind of enveloping that into the player and enveloping their lives into that experience only makes you a deeper fan, only makes you more appreciative of what they do when they are in game or on the stage. I mean, knowing some of the players and some of the streamers and whatever who have come from, and they do this great with the NFL, knowing like people who have come from poverty that build their way up, or, things of that nature, where they face these hard life circumstances and are able to conquer those through a game or through a sport or whatever. It just builds fans, and fans fuel everything. That's the whole. If you don't have a viewer, then none of this really happens at the end of the day. And that's, I think that's something that we get to be cognitive of.
Yeah, that's kind of where our name derived from. Like the whole GhostComms thing is kind of like getting another perspective on a human being. So it's like when you're dead in a game, you get another perspective of how the player is playing the game. So in this scenario, it would be we're getting another perspective on the outside life of an actual person. Like at the end of the day, the person on the other side of a screen is still human. They have another life. Right. They have a normal life. They have a daily routine. It's kind of just figuring out like what that is, what goes on behind the scenes, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny that you brought up like, it's funny that you brought up like the kind of the dip or the bottom that we are in esports right now. Cause we did an episode in Dallas, like IRL. We got to sit down and actually in the elite Airbnb, which was super cool. But we got to sit down with a bunch of guys and talk like just on a couch with a bunch of mics, and we talked about this kind of the same topic of where esports is right now, and we kind of talked about it like a stock, like buying the dip, and that's kind of where, like you talked about, like staying through that. We talked about a few different orgs. Like I was talking to one of the elite guys, and he was saying like, yeah, dude, like elite's going to be on top because we're staying in it right now, and like. We're going to see as this game stays with longevity, because I want to get into your thoughts on the competitive state of the game right now, but the game itself is not going anywhere. Competitive, I think there are arguments here and there, but Fortnite as a whole is going to be way bigger, I think, than a lot of people think right now. We're seeing, I see this future of like, they're kind of taking inspirations from like Roblox and other like, massive, they're building their own like gaming metaverse, and that, you see that with the IP acquisitions, you see that with a bunch of just steps that they've taken in the past few years to build like, and then Creative 2.0 being another massive step more recently. They're really building this to be a super massive monopoly in the gaming space that is kind of a pioneer. It really hasn't been done. So you talk about Fortnite as a game, it's not going anywhere, and I think it's only going to be way bigger than what we think now. But what are your thoughts on the competitive side of the game? What are your thoughts on the state that it's at? Because I think a lot of the younger audience has kind of taken this narrative of, oh, Fortnite is dead, competitive is dead, whatever. They've kind of run with it.
So just quickly, you guys said a lot there. Love what you're doing. I've always been one to try and like tell the stories of people, and regardless of whether it's me, it's a player, it's somebody else in the space, those things are important. The one thing that I think is going to be challenging in esports is it's kind of like gate kept as far as keeping poor people out, which is going to be a challenge, and I think is going to be addressed by high school esports or like middle school esports, different things like that. Having accessibility in schools and having people be able to play without having to afford $1,200 PC, because right now, I mean, my parents would have said no shot am I buying you a $1,200 PC. It was a stretch to get an Xbox every few Christmases. So that's an interesting piece. Don't mean to totally side rail you, but I think not saying that the stories are boring now. I don't think that we get a full diverse community of players necessarily because of that high cost of entry. And I think it's similar to some other sports that are super expensive. Like if you're playing hockey, it's going to cost you a lot of money to get just that equipment and then be able to play. So it's one of those things that I think will be addressed over time. We're starting to see high schools invest in that kind of infrastructure. But
no, for sure. I mean, I've seen that, especially at the college level as well too. We're seeing that like more and more, and that kind of infrastructure I think is being kind of built from the top down. Of like, okay, professional esports, and now we have college esports that's funneling into that, and then we're recruiting from that, and then even the company that I work for, that I do the coaching for, we have a college scout day, so we have our players that sign up for our league. We have a day where they come out and they play their games. They have showcases, and we've gotten kids scholarships, which is just a radical thing. I mean, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be helping kids get scouted for collegiate esports, I just it's a crazy idea, and trying to explain that to like my grandparents, for example, is just an insane thing. I mean, they don't get it at all, and the times are changing quickly. But I mean, we're seeing integrations with high schools. We're seeing integrations with middle schools,
that's actually such an interesting topic to talk about, because like I just ended high school, like I just graduated, and like the last 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months has been all these students getting their offers and all these students applying for scholarships and stuff. And one of my friends actually, like, it was crazy thinking about it, because it never came to the realization. But one of my friends literally got a $45,000 scholarship for Valorant to be a sixth man. Yeah, and he sent the screenshot in a Discord, and everybody just thought he was just trolling or something. But we knew he was good at Valorant, just not like crazy good for a scholarship. And we saw it, and we were sitting in the call. Everybody's just in awe, just like, how does the dude just like it was as a sixth man as well. Like we all congratulated him and everything. It was just really like surprising, not because we don't think he's good. It's just, especially in Canada, like Canadian colleges aren't as heavy on it as like U.S. colleges, because U.S. is all colleges. Here it's university. So seeing that from a university was like $45,000 over 4 years. This is insane.
I mean, high school esports was sanctioned the year after I graduated, which was like crazy.
I don't think high school esports has actually been like crazy in like here. It's not crazy like involved here in Canada, I guess you could say. But I would want to see it like happen.
So. Yeah, I do want to loop back though, but go ahead. No.
There's a litany of issues too with like middle school and high school. A bunch of like nefarious players trying to get into the space just to suck money out of like developers and stuff. So it's gonna have its ups and downs and scare people away at times. But ultimately, like, it was just at the freaking Olympics, so people are going to start caring more about this, especially if it becomes a regular thing where, say at Paris in 2024, there's esports once again, then people are gonna be like, oh, whoa, okay, like I didn't know this was a thing. And even my parents, like, until about a year ago, my dad was like, dude, like, just work on your actual job. He never said this to me, he's told me since, but he's like, I never thought this would turn into anything, and now like you're going to the Olympics, you're going to Copenhagen to cast Fortnite, like it's incredible, because I had no idea that this was a thing. So as we go on and people start to break ground, I guess, and kind of weed out all the nefarious players that will continue to pop up. Like, come on, we're from Fortnite. We've seen a ton of scam and scums.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We don't need to get into all those, but it is going to take some time because it's maybe 15 years at most in esports, I'd say, and we're probably looking at 45, 50 before it becomes like solidified. Sorry, I just went on a tangent.
I do want to loop back though, because I kind of asked you like 3 or 4 questions, and but like, what kind of your view on competitive currently? What are your thoughts in regards to that?
So I'm confused. Don't really understand like a lot of the changes. I think one of the biggest things for me is making this change to ranked, where you really can't even run scrims anymore. Like ranked is just pubs with a symbol in front of it. Yeah. And I think that has been negative overall to the community. We'll see if like ranked is ever actually synthetic to what Fortnite is at a competitive level, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think Arena is the best that it was ever going to be as far as a regularly running game mode where you can queue in at any time. Like there's just always going to be people that want to use that to practice fighting, and unless there's high consequences for going down early or whatever it may be, no one's going to care about playing for endgame, playing for placement. And we even started to see that in tournaments. Like there's duo cash cups round 1, like kids just keying their hearts out. And the format isn't even like fit to do that. Like you should definitely be playing for placement, but those kids don't care because they see Booga key in, they see clicks key in. They're like, oh, this is how you play a lobby. So I think overall there's some like larger systemic issues. And then some of the changes, like I said, recently have been confusing to me. I don't understand how we take out Siphon, which is like a core mechanic of the game. 2/3 of the qualifiers done to the largest LAN event in 4 years. Like how is that a thing? That makes no sense to me.
I was going to ask you your views on Siphon, because I mean the biggest thing for me is endgame clutch potential just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you can't
wait back Storm. There's
you think about all of the most favorable, most iconic moments in Fortnite competitive history. I mean, I think it was Coach Boop did a video on Twitter like highlighting, this is where these clutches would have ended if Siphon didn't exist. And I mean, it was like every major clutch that you can think of. Benji's solo clutch, the Sprite 1v3. Like you have all these moments that wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Siphon. It's just really disappointing to see, because it's like, okay, if the game had started that way, sure, we would have developed our metas and our practices and our habits around it. But taking it out 5 years into the game seems odd to me.
So I don't care about it getting removed. My 2 problems are, 1, they keep saying we're monitoring your feedback and then give no reasoning as to like why Siphon was ever removed, if there's any plans for it to go back. Like that's like me telling you guys I'll come on the podcast, but I'll let you know when. And then you guys ask me again. It's like, yeah, I'll come on. I'll let you know when.
Yeah.
And then you guys are just sitting there like, dude, is this ever going to happen? Like you haven't even told us if you're going to show up one day, other than like it might happen.
Right.
So that's one. And then the second one is during the middle of these qualifiers for Global Championship. If they did it at the beginning of the year and all 3 FNCSs or majors were played into Global Championship, awesome. Love that. But like this is a high level competition. No competition should have a major mechanic change. This is like changing the rules of football. Now a first down's 15 yards instead of 10. And we've
going
just
into the playoffs.
Everything.
Exactly.
Well, not even the playoffs, like week 9. It's like week 9. We're deciding, okay, we're totally changing the rules of how this game's played, which that is what gets me going. Watching the game, though, with the slurp juices, I think the game plays out really well. I'm not going to lie. I was a hater of removing Siphon, and I still am for those reasons. But the gameplay itself, I think, one, promotes great team play, which I would always prefer over solo clutch, whether or not it's exciting or not. But it is better Fortnite, in my opinion. Actually,
competitive integrity.
Opinion, it just is. And then secondly, at least in finals lobbies, from what I heard and what I saw, opens was no different. Kids just key their hearts out because they see clicks do it. But Now, within the finals lobby, they were super stacked. The pacing was really nice. People were playing off different kind of moments during the game, not necessarily just playing like, I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's still early. But I've liked what I've seen so far because it again promotes the better teams, not just the better players.
Maybe I'll take a stab at it and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like players are more contemplative about the fights that they're taking because they're a lot more aware of the risks if they're, they can sacrifice positioning or their cash or whatever. Because I think that's kind of like Coach T Church is someone that I'm like really close with, and he and I have kind of talked about the meta and how it's developed, and he said that that's something that he's really had to work out of a lot of, especially top fighters and top fraggers like that he's worked with is, hey, especially now that there isn't Siphon, you don't kind of get to make back damage that you take, in a mid game fight. So you have to really actually choose what fights you're taking and what's the reasoning for it. Is this beneficial at all? Especially in a format where it's so placement heavy for most of the tournaments that we've seen. So maybe that's what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about something a little bit more, but
I think that's accurate to what I was saying, and I think it just creates more value on like BloodX is one that talks about creating game plans, strategies, and that's something that's kind of been absent for the past, I don't know. It really started during trios to like see certain top teams regularly repeat a strategy or a game plan or the script, I think BloodX calls it, like putting their script in practice and then putting it in play. And the teams that are able to do that have been phenomenal, whether they're Siphon or not. And I think we'll continue to see that, just understanding here's where I need to be at each stage in the game. Here's what I need to do at each perspective. And then the teams that kind of just play the game, like they're going to be terrible. You can't just play the game. Granted, I think Reet and Ritual just won the Duo Cash Cup, and I'm not saying, like, I don't know what they've done, but at the same time, Reet to me is not one that's like, oh, I'm going to go step by step and understand exactly what I need to do. He's a dude that jumps in boxes and is just a controller fragger.
Right.
Things can change, right? Players change, they adapt. And I think actually they are working with T-Church.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, Reed is,
So, like, that's interesting to me because we're going to see teams that totally just fall off because they can't create a game plan as far as how competitive now works because it's awesome. You could say removing Siphon sucks. It's terrible. Fortnite doesn't care. Like, they don't care what 5 people say or even like 3,000 people say for all of competitive. Like, there's 200 million people that play this game. You are not even a drop in the bucket. You're like the condensation on the outside of the bucket. So people need to understand that, and you just have to start to learn the game for what it is rather than what you want it to be.
Well, and that's fun. Adaptability, I think, is one of the biggest markers of what makes a good Fortnite pro. I mean, you have changes the week of, the last week of an FNCS. You have like almost every season we get an update days before heats or days before grands or like
last season was the worst. That was the worst.
I mean, where it's like
talk about that.
Where I mean, you need to be able to, and yes, like there's an acceptable line to that. There's a balance, of course, but as a Fortnite pro, you need to be willing and ready to be prepared for those things and have backup plans on your backup plans if you really want to be successful. And I think it speaks again to that complacency that we get to. And they're like, well, I'm good enough. I'm whatever. But it's like, no, do you have a backup plan for your backup plan? And we see that going into like, we talked about Grands before with Cooper right after his second place. We had him on and we talked about how Grands day 1 and day 2 are completely different games. And it's really who does the most homework in between those first two, the day 1 and day 2 that ends up having those 300, 400 point day 2s and putting themselves, from like 30th to 10th or something, or, breaking a top 5. So I think adaptability and preparation, both in harmony, are something that makes a good Fortnite pro, and that's not talked about all that often because it's not the flashy stuff. It's not the piece controller, and it's not the, but it's also just, it's interesting because T-Church and I have talked about this too, about how a lot of the pros, their gameplay and their game plans and just kind of how do they approach competitive is very mirrored in like their personal lives, like the way they kind of act, or like you'll see a lot of those aggressive guys, they'll be the ones to post things on Twitter that you're like, wow, you posted that, or things of that nature, where we see a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff in their personal lives that's reflected in their gameplay as well. And that's just a super interesting, like, psychological thing. And I think T-Church and I have talked about this too, of like, I take that as a responsibility of, oh, well, I'm helping them with more than just Fortnite, or I'm helping, you know, like, they're still kids. They're still 15, 16, 17 years old. And like, they need role models. They need people that are kind of directing their lives and kind of telling them, hey, you should not do this, or hey, you know, maybe you should pay attention to this, or whatever. Do you view yourself as a role model? Do you think you've taken on that role for anyone?
I think regardless of whether or not I view myself as one, I think I am. Just because I'm one of the older people in the space. I may not have a massive following, but there's a lot of professional players that follow me, and like managers, orgs, different kind of things like that. And I try and push people to hold a better standard, because I've seen the bottom. I've seen the scam orgs. I've seen, like, I'm going to give you an example. I was running my own podcast. I had the owners of 2AM on there. That was probably like 8 months ago, 9 months ago. And they've just been a disaster, right? That org is just throwing money at places. And it's disgusting, some of the stuff that you see out of the owners of that organization. Who knows if it's even a real business? They may just be paying players to throw something in their Twitter. I'm throwing shots. I don't care. It's been disgusting. I hope they fail. But I challenge them to be better for people. You're literally, it doesn't matter what you do for these kids within the game. You're raising young adults, and if you raise them well, they will get benefit out of whatever you do, and you will see benefit if you have better human beings. And that 100%. To me is like the biggest thing is you need to see it as more than just simply playing a video game and shit posting on Twitter. You know,
running a team in specifically Fortnite. Again, the Fortnite scene is very young in comparison to other games. It's not Valorant, where most of these guys are like 19, 20 years old. It's not.
Well, which are still young adults, and you still see that.
Which are still young adults, but they're not as developed as those men, because these guys are. There's pros ranging from 13 to 18, and not much older, right? And the ones that are much older are the ones that are like slowing down, they're not playing the game as much, whatever it is. Anyways, but running a team is like, it's kind of like a classroom if you think about it. It's like, if you're, let's say you're a lead, or like you're a teacher, like you're the owner, whatever it is. You're raising kids by showing them not to play the game, but showing them how to be respectful, how to have these types of traits that are useful not only in gaming but also in life in general. And if you can't be that type of role model, in the sense that we were asking you the role model question, if you can't be that type of role model, you shouldn't be worried about a leadership role, and you shouldn't be worried about having an ownership role, because you shouldn't be the one teaching them when you don't even know yourself what you're doing.
Well, I mean, that's as a coach, I was a youth pastor for some years. I mean, I've been in a lot of positions where I've poured into kids and tried to make good human beings, and taking that responsibility super seriously. And that's, I mean, even sports coaches, all the best sports coaches I had did not give a shit if you were a good player, if you were being a shitty human being, you know. And I think like, especially from a football background for me, that the most impactful coaches I had were the ones who made sure that you were doing everything right off the field before you were doing anything right on. And I think with esports, I think because of the nature of, oh, you're still at home, you're sitting behind a screen, you don't feel a lot of the consequences of the same things that you do. It's developed this attitude of, I can do whatever the fuck I want, nobody cares, blah, 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 blah. And like, it breeds those people, those personalities. I mean, I know since I've been on PL, there have been multiple instances where I've had players tweet things or say things or do things, and I'm glad that I'm in a position where I have the opportunity to go, hey, like, I'm going to have a man-to-man with you. This shouldn't be tweeted. And it's not just for your brand. It's not just for your reputation. It's not just for the org's sake. It's like, this is about you as a person. You're going to look back on this in 5-10 years and be like, oh shit, I did that. And like, that was a stupid mistake.
Not even 5-10 years, like a week. Sometimes.
Like a week. Exactly.
Stuff. And then not even a week, like later that night, you're like, wow. Dude, why did I say that to somebody? Like, that was terrible.
Dude,
Sometimes it's treated as a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true.
If you want to put that into like context and a connection, I mean, you can literally relate it back to what happened last night with Clicks and that kid. He got griefed in this cash cup just by not knowing his actual responsibilities as a player, especially when you're a young kid like him. Like, I know the kid. I've talked to this kid multiple times, and I've known him for almost a year now, I think. But so I used to lead a team, and he was actually on that team for a little bit.
Are you
of
talking
time.
about the kids that landed on clicks and sent to the last game?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was one of my players for the team I used to run, and he was on it twice. And multiple times I've had to tell him like what he does. Sometimes it's the wrong actions, and he did learn from it. He has gotten better since then. But yesterday I saw it while I was streaming, and I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" So the thing is, there's a lot of ways. Like we were saying, this whole siphon thing, like getting rid of siphon, it can increase like the skill gap or whatever it is. But there are certain things in this game right now that you can't take away, and I don't even know if there's a way to take it away, because he literally had in his title landing on clicks.
Yeah,
and it's like why? It's just like why do it? It's not only
because they're geared towards clout, fame, money, success of some kind. I mean, it comes, in my opinion, it comes down to a worldview thing. I mean, I talk about this a lot, especially in the streaming world, of like, there are two very distinct types of people in the streaming world to me, and people who are in it for something beyond themselves that's selfless, whether it's to inspire people or to teach people or to entertain people or whatever. And there are people who are in it just because they want to get rich quick, they want to get famous, they want to get noticed, they want to have all the fancy stuff and and whatever. It's a very interesting place because you have these two complete polar opposite groups of people that are coexisting, and sometimes one looks like the other or vice versa. And it's you really have to vet these people and kind of decipher what's really going on with some of these people. And it's a hard thing to do. I mean, you really have to like take some risks sometimes.
I think in the same perception where like, how like online messaging is like something can be taken very differently, just how someone message it, even if it's not the same interpretation. That same perception can be used in this, where it's like, even if you're the person that cares a lot about content, sometimes you do something by accident, and it can be taken as you care more about the money than you do content, and then it becomes a whole controversy, and the Twitter timeline, all that stuff. Yeah. It just feedbacks, but that's the whole concept of the online gaming world, is that no matter what you do, you're most likely not going to be a perfect human being. You'll always have something called out on you for it, even if it's something small.
But
even if it's something that's
there's a difference between slipping up and like genuinely caring about trying your best and all of that, and then just straight up like, some of these people just don't seem to give a shit. They really just like, I'm going to do whatever I think I want to do in the moment. Consequences be damned. Whoever gets affected, like, fuck them, whatever. I mean, that's the attitude, and that's the attitude that needs to be weeded out. But
let's be honest though, like, they are kids. I did terrible things when I was young.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm 28 now, so like I hold myself to a higher standard. I had those experiences. I've learned. I'm a much better person now than I was 10 years ago. But at the same time, like, there can be people like myself that, maybe I'm not the biggest creator, but I can put out like these thoughts, whether it be on the podcast I do a Monster Panda, just in the way I present myself and my messaging, and hopefully people see that. But at the same time, like, I'm not jumping on calls with kids. Like, that's, I don't know, it's not my place. It's also kind of weird to me. I don't want to be talking to like 15-year-olds other than like if I'm working with them for a summer camp or something. So there's not, in the early days, I feel like we had like Lupo and Tim and Courage. Ninja, maybe not as the best example, but an okay example. And we've kind of lost those where now some of the bigger stars, Clicks is better than he was. Not going to say like he's not better than he was, but he's still not the best example. And when he's streaming with Scented, like, Scented's a grown-ass man who's just trolling the whole time. I watched them play the Cash Cup last night. And like, I find it hilarious. Like, it's fun to watch.
But you know better.
There's way too many people that are going to be like 14, 15, 16 years old.
Who think that's serious and model after it.
That, and then say that stuff to their mom or their teacher.
And it's crazy because kids that are like 16, 17 watch him and they find him a role model. But realistically, he's a year older than them. He's a year older. He knows not much.
I mean, you talk about the psychology of that. It's parasocial relationships. It's, it's the, I think that kind of what you were saying, like, we were all kids like that, but we weren't being broadcast to hundreds of thousands of people. There weren't careers on the line. There wasn't, like, all of that. And that creates this environment where they get elevated to these levels, and I think things are preconceived or expected of them or whatever that aren't the case. I mean, they're not, anything beyond a normal 14, 15, 16-year-old. They just happen to be really good at a game or entertaining to watch or whatever. But it's this like celebrity culture thing that we have where, because Clicks is that good at the game and he has that many viewers, there must be something about him that we need to listen to or we need to whatever. And just kind of celebrity culture in general, but obviously it more applies to our niche in this way of like, that I try and tell people like, yeah, they're just normal kids. Like they go to normal high school or they're like, they're people at the end of the day, they're fallible. And I think that's where a lot of kids don't have the conscious awareness of that. And they see Clicks and they want to emulate him and they don't know what parts to leave out and what parts to, whatever. And they just go, oh, that's Clicks. I'm going to do everything he's doing because I want to be like him. And that's how kids think. And I think a lot of people, I think one of the biggest problems in the scene is there's no one on the back end in the older like parts of the scene in the background in the infrastructure that's taking these role models, because they're role models whether they like it or not. Clicks is a role model whether he accepts that or not. And there's no one like really, or there's not enough people, I should say. There are definitely people out there, but there's not enough people that are taking that responsibility and grabbing those people and influencing the influencers to say, hey, you have a platform, you're affecting this demographic of people, you're teaching them these things, whether you like it or not. You need to be conscious of that. And that's, I know in my personal work, like with PL, that's something that I've had to teach them of like, hey, when you tweet this, it's not just you incriminating yourself or saying something stupid. It's you teaching all these kids that that's how it should be done, or that's cool, or that's whatever, because they look up to you because you're in a position to that. And that's a hard thing to take as a 14, 15, 16-year-old. But that, I think there needs to be more people that are mentoring in that way. And that's just kind of the youth of esports. That's hard to do. It's hard to find those, but
yeah, people are doing it, definitely.
Yeah, I
don't know that everyone is listening.
That's true. Yeah,
I know personally of plenty of conversations that have happened, and then you see changes in some players, and then you see the same mentality and attitude in others. So at the end of the day, like you look at John Jones in the UFC, like one of the worst human beings possible, but damn, can that man fight somebody you put him in a cage? Like he will win every single fight, no matter who is against him in that cage. And it doesn't necessarily matter what he does in his personal life. Like, when you're good at something, you're good at something. And
or you have the Conor McGregor thing recently. I mean,
or look at like anyone in the NFL, like Kareem Hunt, Joe Mixon, both have footage of them like beating a woman. And they're still getting, well, I guess Kareem Hunt's not signed, but Joe Mixon is signed on a team. Ray Rice did it back in the day, like beat the crap out of some chicks. So it's just like, you're good enough, people will ignore those things. And I mean, I don't know. I see it all the time in the NFL, so I'm not surprised. No one, at least from what we're talking about, it's just saying bad things, and we're not seeing kind of that harassment, the physical assault, those kind of stuff. So I'm cool with it if it stays where it is. My fear though is like it develops into more. But who knows? I don't know. That we got way off where we started.
No,
I mean, that's the whole
conversation though.
To be fair, that's the whole point of the podcast though. It's kind of you just travel to different points, even when you're talking about something so different. Just one word transitions it really.
Fair enough.
I mean, both so okay, like we were talking about like pros and stuff. We were talking about people that are role models in the scene, and it's of course tier 1 pros are one of those biggest role models. Have you ever like had interactions with tier 1 pros, specifically any of them, or like pros in general that are like, I guess you could say, known in the quote unquote community?
I just ran a camp, a summer camp, and NPen and Good Guy Nani were two of the guests. NPen, great dude.
Love NPen.
We just were in Singapore for the Olympics, chatted with all the guys there. And I don't like actively seek out having conversations. I had, when I was doing my podcast, I had some of them on and chatted with them. So I don't actively seek out speaking with them. But if there's something I can offer them, or if there's something I need to ask, like when I was doing FNCS, I used to just send players a couple of questions for preparation. Again, going back to that like traditional sports prep, asking them, hey, what's your game plan? What are your expectations? Different things like that.
Nice.
What about the broadcast team? Because I think it was really interesting. Lash kind of gave us this view of the behind the scenes in the broadcast team that was very different, I think, from the perceptions of kind of the Fort competitive community. Like, he was like, you're all kind of buddy buddy, you all know each other, you all are super supportive, there's no like real beef or anything. Has that kind of been your experience?
Oh, it's awesome. Like, getting to work an event with anybody. I've had one bad experience, and it's with someone that doesn't do Fortnite, just did one event. And other than that, like, going to Copenhagen, getting to hang out with all those guys for several weeks.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. Like, everyone is just a good person, and no one is necessarily like, sometimes I feel like you have conversations with people and they're trying to get something out of you.
Yeah.
But
Forcing it. Yeah.
when we're doing that, it's just, genuine hanging out. Like, I've made friends with a ton of the people on the broadcast. Monster and Panda are two of my good friends now. Levin, I think, is a good friend as well. We've been chatting for years, so to be able to do something with him finally was awesome. And it's just like, Reese has helped me a ton with content. Luckily, or not unluckily for him, I freaking stumbled and haven't done anything with all the advice he gave me, but like, he's another good dude that has been super helpful. So yes, everyone is actually awesome. Also, shout out Lash. We talk about like how some of these kids don't have their head on right. Dude. That kid is well above where I was at like 22, much less like he's about to turn 18. So that kid is driven. He's one of those special kids, and I hope one day, we get to see him on FNCS. And I think now that he's turning 18, he'll be up there soon enough. Yeah, no, he was an extremely pleasant conversation, and it really gave me hope for, oh wow, there are people in the scene that are there. I mean, because it really does impact those types of people that we were talking about more when it's someone their age that is able to act like that, think like that, and I mean, that was my experience growing up. Was it always meant more if it came from me being a peer of theirs than a parent or a teacher or whatever. So if you can be a role model by action and not by hey, I'm older than you and I'm speaking down on you, that can really be impactful. And Lash was just I mean, he's great at what he does. He's super passionate, but he's also just a really good dude.
It was great because I mean, not me specifically, but Jatmon also is someone that's wanted to do like casting and analysts type of things. And after the podcast that we recorded with him, like, he gave tips and stuff, and he was willing to give tips. Like, it wasn't like it wasn't like Jat was asking or anything. It was literally that he asked, yo, do you want tips? Do you want like how to get started type of things? And it was cool because I was just sitting around like listening, because I didn't have much to contribute to that type of conversation because I'm not into it as much. But just listening in, like, seeing how hopeful he is in Jatmon, and also seeing how appreciative he is about what he's been given. Like, he would nonstop compliment the broadcast, nonstop compliment what his the opportunity he's been given, and also
and Monster, and mentioned a lot of
everything, everybody on the broadcast, and just saying like what he's gotten out of this. Clearly, like if you were seeing it from my eyes, Jatmon, like if I was in that role where you were, you would see what I saw in you. You looked so excited for some reason.
Oh, I did. I was buzzing, man. He's a great kid.
And it's not just him too, which is the awesome thing. Like,
I can see the whole broadcast team.
My career has been helped along by, I'd say, Sundown, Monster, and Bala. Like, at the beginning, Bala reached out to me, asked me for my email, because he's like, somebody wanted to reach out to you and needed new casters, and then 3 months later I'm on Dreamhack. I don't think that's a coincidence, And then Monster constantly throwing me gigs, starting with like play versus little third-party things, and now he's like, dude, I don't put you on here because you're my friend. I put you on here because you're good. You've earned this. And getting those responsibilities, those little pieces of help, not only just getting jobs. Like, another shout out, Adam Savage. Adam Savage, first time I was in studio, I was working with him and Vivid. Both Vivid and I had never walked onto a stage before. Actually, I don't want to say that for Vivid. I never walked onto a stage before. So I had no idea what I was doing. And Adam sat down with me and just kind of talked through different things of like, hey, here's some little helpful hints. Monster kind of did the same. So, and then Sundown has always been someone that's been reciprocal. of just having conversations, talking about things openly,
Yeah.
which I appreciate a ton. Kind of stinks that he's no longer with Epic or even on the broadcast. I would love to have him back.
Yeah.
So yeah, so many good people. Shio helped me, like sat me down for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, literally going through VODs, casting with me, and then like telling me, hey, here's some feedback. And that helped me again immensely. Just these little things that you may have never thought of when you're just talking about a video game, and then you step back, have someone with experience and better portrayals of that conversation, just helps you take those leaps and honestly skip steps in your development to get even further than you should be. And
we've talked about that with both content, you know, whatever you're doing, having a supportive group of people with more experience, having mentors, having all of that, like where you can all develop and grind and encourage each other and pick each other up together is a massively impactful thing. And not just for, you know, esports, but for life. I mean, just having people to go through life with that are your support system and whatnot is a super valuable thing.
For me specifically, I think I'd rather have a group like of course I want a supportive group and I always want friends in the scene, but I think I'd rather have a group that's supportive to the point where supportive as in they put me down because they want to see me up rather than having
give
the
you
friends
constructive criticism.
Yeah,
you mean
exactly,
of course,
because I'd rather, because friends again they can be lenient and the relationship you have, they wouldn't want to risk anything happening just because of feedback or whatever you want to consider it. It's again online messaging, online the way words are said. It's not the same perception as being like face to face saying all that. So when I have a supportive group of people that need to push me down, so they because they know that I can go. I can pass limits that haven't been seen. I think I find that better just because I know I can pass those limits too, and I know I can hold myself to that type of responsibility.
For sure,
if that makes sense.
This is gonna feel out of left field, but did you go to Invitational?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
How was that? Right outside of Raleigh.
I stopped you at what?
We literally talked about
it. I know. But how is that experience from your perspective? Like, were you in like the player lounges, or like what? Were you doing any work there, or were you just there as a...
I was just there as a fan. So I actually had a wedding on Saturday, so I didn't go Saturday.
Okay.
And then got a little wasted on Saturday, not gonna lie. Barely slept, and then drove back. It was out in Wilmington, so it's like a 2-hour drive. So I drove back 2 hours, dropped my wife off, showered, and then headed straight to the arena. So running on very little sleep. It was an awesome event. They wound up throwing me on. One of the guys from the Epic Broadcast team came in and was like, hey, do you want to be on stage for an interview? It's like, okay, yeah, but no, not necessarily what I look like now. So I had to make sure I looked acceptable to go up on stage.
Yeah.
That was cool. But that was like the only thing I did. And then, there was a little after party. I stopped by, said hello. I was like, guys, I have to go home. I'm running on like 2 hours of sleep. So I mean, awesome experience. And I hope they do some more stuff in the area.
Yeah.
And getting wasted before the great idea for next time.
No, I mean,
it was my buddy's wedding.
It's understandable. Fair point. No, I mean, I only asked because Invitational was my first LAN, and it was just massive for me for that experience alone. I mean, I encourage anyone, get to a LAN if you can, of any kind, because it's a magical experience. If you're, to see all those people that you've built something with and networked with, and just share that similar passion with you, it's the atmosphere was electric in there. I really could have stopped with anyone and talked to them for half an hour and not been mad about it. And it was just it was just like the egos get dropped. It's just a different vibe. Everyone's kind of enjoying themselves at a high, whatever you want to call it. But like that was an incredible experience, and that was the first. I mean, what are your thoughts kind of on going into Copenhagen? What are you like the world global championship? Like, is this going to be more akin to like a World Cup? Like, I think the LANs are going to keep improving, but what are your kind of hopes and expectations going into Copenhagen?
So just want to echo that sentiment. If you ever can go to a LAN event, go to it, whether it be like a smaller local one, a Dreamhack, like maybe just your collegiate esports event around the corner, or your high school esports event. They're all a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you'll make friends. Like if you're there to watch video games, you'll find someone else there that wants to watch video games and talk about it.
Yeah.
But going into Global Championship, I think I mentioned how changing Siphon has been a big change mid-season or mid-qualifiers to get there. I hope, and from what I've seen, I think I don't think he's the CEO. Maybe he's the CCO. I don't know. Anyway, one of the head guys at Blast just basically said they're pushing the limits for this event in particular, and they do a lot of events. So I'm interested to see. They're based out of Copenhagen. They're doing it at an arena they've worked at a lot, and they've put on some amazing events at. So I expect that to continue. As far as production-wise, I think it'll be awesome. We don't know the format. We do know the format. I'm interested to see how the format goes because it's that upper bracket, lower bracket kind of vibe, and I don't know that I like that. Mostly because I'm a person that loves preparation, storylines, narratives coming into the event, and when we have arguably 25 people that don't deserve it as much as everybody else playing on the second day because they qualified through last chance qualifier, which is not a great format, going opens to top 200 and then however many spots from that top 200 go on to the global championship. Like that just isn't the same kind of Fortnite. They haven't had to play in a set lobby like everybody else to get there. That's a little ridiculous in my opinion, but whatever. I don't make the rules. If we see some of the top players, like let's say an Acorn and Cold land wherever they land, they're contested by 3 teams, a Middle East team, an Asia team, and a European team, all land at that same spot. And that so happens that's where they want to be. And then they don't qualify through for the first 2 days. Well, there's probably going to be a lot of buildup towards Acorn and Cold going into this event, and it could all get fumbled by a team. Not saying they don't deserve it, right? Because I love seeing new players excel, but at the same time, like, I don't love the format of having people go to a LAN event and then not be able to play the finals that we believe, or I believe they should qualify for straight up. We'll see. It could be exciting, but I think we're playing a single day finals, which is 6 or 8 games, whatever it is. Don't love that. You said earlier that second day is huge. Whoever does the most homework, like that is a huge difference. That's where coaches come in, I believe, as well. And we've seen the rise of coaches over the past year and a half, which has been sick. It makes better Fortnite and makes better Fortnite players. So overall, format scares me a little bit. I'm open. I'm not gonna totally like bag it, even though I just did. I think there is some opportunity for it to be cool. I just think like the first 2 days, top 25, like how is that? It's not exciting. Who cares you get top 25, right? The 25th team could win 1 game off spawn in the 6 matches, win a match, and then they're top 25 and done nothing else. So I don't know. I would do it differently, but I think the production itself, what is output, what we see on a Twitch screen, or if you go to the event in Copenhagen, that will be huge. And then also EU is the largest region by miles as far as Fortnite competitive goes. So we'll see, do they show up? Because there's not been, I mean, I guess Invitational had thousands of people there, but you hope, right? Tens of thousands of people is the goal. So we'll see what happens when Copenhagen comes around.
Do you, because you kind of talk about, like these decisions that maybe are questionable, maybe out of touch with what the community would choose, in regards to changes they've made, formats for major tournaments, whatever. Kind of being more like you've worked, for Epic alongside Epic. What is your perception of kind of their attitude towards comp? Because a lot of people, I think the narrative is that Epic doesn't really care about competitive, that they're just like, it's kind of a side thing. But and to kind of already, I guess, rebut my own point, like in the broadcast especially, the strides that have been made in the broadcast in the past 6 months to a year have been awesome. I mean, having the website with the clean feed and the broadcast, like all of the production stuff has improved a lot. Invitational was incredible, especially for a first event back from COVID. I mean, that, like, I talked to Simos, who's Peterbot's manager and does a lot of that stuff, and he said at the partner party, they like went around and they asked him, hey, like, you know, what did you like about the event? What would you like to see improved? What do you like about the game? What would you like to see improved? And they literally took out a notepad and started taking notes. And like, but I think a lot of people perceive that Epic is not doing that in the everyday, day to day, and listening to the community.
So I think to say they don't care about competitive is dumb. I think they care about creating competitive players. I don't think they necessarily care about creating competitive viewers, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because a viewer isn't going to go buy V-Bucks, and it's a business at the end of the day, and you need to think they're trying to convert the millions and millions they spend on competitive into some kind of return. And when you think about it, you know, if you're a competitive player, I think all of us have some kind of competitive drive. We've probably bought more skins in the game than, you know, your casual friend that hops in every time there's a massive update, buys the battle pass, and then never touches the game for another 6 months. So inherently for them, playing competitive and building people that are bought into the competitive ecosystem are going to make them more money, regardless of what's going on outside of it and the decisions they make. I mean, a perfect example to me is the Solo Victory Cash Cup. They said that more people had won money for the first time, or someone said more people had won their first earnings during those events than any other period before. And that's like a huge, you get a little bit of buy-in from someone. They win a game, they win some money, it feels real, they keep playing. Now will continue to play, and you now have a player. So that to me is like where everything comes from. And I think not enough people understand that, because they're looking at the Twitch number and it's like, oh, only 10,000 people watching Fortnite? Fortnite's dead. But it's also like, okay, how many people are watching in Legends Landing? And we're going to be able to see for the first time this upcoming season how many people are actually in that map. And from what I've heard, it's way more than you're going to see on Twitch. So we'll see certain things like that.
Well, that would explain, that would explain the ranked, like, because we've been seeing Epic make changes that encourage the casual player. They are trying to make it the easiest it's ever been for a casual player to transition into competitive. That's why ranked and pubs are the same. It's why it's the same loot pool. It's why they were, like, arguably you could say maybe why they removed Siphon, or why they wanted to try that, because they said when they removed Siphon from pubs originally in season 7 or 8 or whatever that was of chapter 1, that it encouraged too much of a W key playstyle. They didn't like it. The skill disparity was so high, and so they were never going to put it back. And like, so we've kind of seen those changes, and that may come from that attitude. And I think that would at least make sense to me in my head of like, they are trying to, and the rank system too. It creates this. It creates a system where you can progress at your own rate. You know, like if someone can jump in, they're not going against Polarized with 60,000 points in arena, you know, when you have 0. Because I mean, you could load into a match with 0 arena points and be facing the arena grinders or pro players or whatever. And I mean, it's discouraging to get shit on that badly. That's just like it is. It's hard. But so I think that we've seen changes that are making that the focus of like, oh, you're a casual player, well, here, try ranked, you know, like just dip your toes in competitive a little bit. And you know, even the smaller tournaments where you only need gold or whatever, you know, as opposed to like the FNCS format, kind of like trying to trickle these people in. So you articulated it better than I could have, into kind of what I was thinking in regards to that, of like, oh yeah, that's what they're doing, is they're building a competitive player, not a competitive viewer. I like that. And
I feel like most people don't think of it that way, but you look at the numbers, like I was trying to make sure that, you know, I was in gold for solo Kashi later today, and there's like 200,000 people playing ranked battle royale, and that's just like a random Friday. The season hasn't been new. There's nothing. I guess there's a couple new things, but it's not any kind of significant update today. And to see those numbers is huge. One of the other things I do want to say is they've also been able to make it this far and have this much success. So while I may criticize them, the community loves to criticize them. They're also doing something right. regardless of what we want to say and what we think is the right decision.
Right.
They've succeeded in what they've done, and I think not enough people give them credit for that. But then on the opposite, there's a massive company involved that is a large corporation, and if I don't know if you guys have any experience working with large corporations, they move slowly, decisions are not made quickly. Lots of red lines and different things that roadblocks.
Every time somebody criticizes Hogman, I'm like, he's behind so much red tape. He's just the face. Like he is the fall guy. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but that's what he was hired to be. Is direct your attention here. It's like that. He's not making any final decisions. I can almost guarantee you that he is tried to put out every change that we've ever asked for. He echoes the community more than people think, and he still gets crapped on all the time. And I'm like, that's not Hogman. That's suits. That's red tape. That's investors. Whatever. But I don't know. That's just a small side tangent to what you were saying.
And if you think about it, he's a manager, right? Then there's the director. Then there's a VP. Then there's a president. Then there's a C-level person. Yep. So those people all have decision-making power above what Hogman's doing. And if you've worked within a company, you understand that's just how things work. And it's not necessarily his fault. He may go to them and be like, hey, here's how the community feels. Here's what's going on. And then they probably portray it as like, okay, how does this make business sense for us? Because ultimately, again, it's a business. They're trying to make money. Tim Sweeney talks about, how he's not necessarily in it for the money and always, high and mighty.
Well, that's PR stuff. I mean,
he seems like a genuine good dude, but you got billions of dollars now. You don't care, but a company still does care. Those people are hired to make those decisions. So I also think the people within the company are reasons why things get roadblocked. Because say I make a decision, well, that could be my job if that decision doesn't go well. So I'm going to continue to push that decision regardless of what the community's saying. There could be some, like Taylor Yates made the decision to take Siphon out, and if Siphon comes back because it was a terrible decision, well, my boss probably isn't going to be too happy with me. So I'm going to be justifying Siphon removed from the game no matter what happens, because that is a lot of people take their work personally, and then you're taking that decision personally. So then you're fighting for your life because you're not trying to lose your job. You're not trying to get a bunch of shade from your coworkers and different things like that. So people also play a factor, regardless of like corporations and stuff. People play a factor in all this.
I think this is my last question, Vishal, unless you have something else. But what's your ideal? What's your dream? Like, where do you want to be kind of in your career, or like what's an end game for you?
I don't know. I think I used to have a clear goal, and before I got on the FNCS broadcast, that was the goal. Now that I've been there, it's not necessarily the goal anymore. I would love to go back for short periods, but having those guys be out in Copenhagen for 5 weeks, I have a wife, I'm hoping to have kids soon. It's just not something I want to be doing, is living in a different country 5 weeks out of the year for multiple different months. So commentating, I would love to keep doing that, as far as not smaller, but weekend events, or maybe a week long at most. Talking with my wife, that's the most comfortable she is with. Being away for multiple weeks is just not it. So commentating, maybe taking a step back. I work with XP League. They're like a rec esports. So I do some
Bully's mom, right?
Yes. Bully's a coach as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Nice.
So there's a lot of different franchises that are all across the country and Canada as well. So they're building. I like working with those guys. What they're building is pretty cool. So I'm hoping that continues to expand over time. And then there's been a job opening at NC State for an esports program director. That would be sick. That would be kind of like an end game. I get to work with my alma mater. I get to build an esports program there and help kids that were in my position 10 years ago.
I'd like to see how Canada's integration into esports goes. I'd love to see that.
when I started looking for esports jobs, that is the most common esports director colleges all across the country. So many are trying to get in on it right now. And then in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, build a program that, because it's as much as we talked about like the buy-in for a college, it's actually a lot less expensive than like a football stadium or a basketball court, or like things of that nature. So especially like those smaller tech schools, it's so in line with what they're doing. They can implement it into their programs as well. So then you see these like, oh, well, we'll do esports. And you see so many of these like smaller, there's one that's like, I see an Instagram ad for them all the time. I think it's New England Institute of Technology. Like they've built a massive esports program. You have like universities that are doing almost all esports related stuff. Like I think Full Sail is one of the best examples of those. They're doing esports media. I know someone, a Twitch streamer friend of mine who is majoring in esports media, and she's doing casting classes and she's learning all of that stuff, which is really cool. And I love to see esports developing into that, because it's going to be this current generation that's working on it, that's building this infrastructure that's going to sustain it and build esports to be something that has longevity. Because right now it's just not there. The foundations are being built by all the people that are doing other jobs and are taking risks and using their personal money. Like I know a lot of orgs are financed by people with their personal money, their savings or their extra money that they're making, and they're pouring into it because they believe in it and they want to build something, and they want to keep the community alive and all that. But yeah, I've got everything I want, Vishal. Unless you have any more questions, we can.
No.
To finish up on that topic, is one of the things that I think gets overlooked is how many careers there are in esports.
Yes.
There's not just being a pro player. Like that's
right.
All people see at the front end, but there's graphic designers. There's every traditional job you would have in a business that's trying to sell goods or services.
An
marketing,
accountant and exactly.
Sales, finance, operations. Those are all real jobs. And one of the things that scares me, and one of the things why I wanted to pursue this career, is I don't want people getting an esports degree. I think that's so dumb. It's like the dumbest thing you could do, because go get a real degree and then use it in esports. It's the same job, just focused on other things. If I wanted to go get, let's say, a sales job working for an NFL team, I'm not going to go get a sales sports degree, right? That's just not necessarily. There is kind of sports management. Yes, that makes sense. Managing people, managing players, but it's that real world experience. And one of the things that scares me is seeing a lot of these people that have never done anything before try and sell you on an esports degree that is not going to get you an actual job. Experience gets you an actual job, and then having a real degree that you've seen from a university, like an accounting or a finance degree, that you can actually know what you're doing if we bring you in here. So,
well, and that's part of the beauty of esports is you get to, you get to build experience. Like that. There's so much that you can just get into it. You see like graphic designers, like the guy who did our graphic design stuff, he was super small. And then he's doing, he just hit me up. He was like, hey dude, like I appreciate all your help. I have a client that's doing a $6,000 job for me, or that I'm doing he's built an actual business and he's doing really well for himself. And like, he learned that because he wanted to start doing like Fortnite montages and stuff like that. And he started learning graphic design and he started teaching himself. And like, we've seen that. We see that with Lash, to bring that example full circle. He started doing it because he loved Fortnite, and he had people were like, you have the voice for it, go do it. Like, and then he learned, and it was like, he learned on the job. And I can say for everything that I'm doing, in my job and whatever, experience is the killer. Just go learn the stuff, start doing it, whether it's content creation, casting, competitive, whatever you're doing, go learn the job, go do it, like whatever, go build experience. Because it's going to be more valuable than a degree, especially in this industry at the end of the day. Maybe in 15, 20 years, you're going to need a degree, to get in those positions, but that's just not where the industry is right now. It needs people who are going out and making the mistakes and learning and building that knowledge that then is going to be taught in a classroom 10 years from now. And that's just kind of where esports is. But we have two questions that we always ask at the end. The first one being kind of, what can we expect from you in the near future? What are your plans coming up? Anything exciting that you want to kind of announce or anything like that?
nothing, and I'm super excited to be doing nothing. I've been traveling a ton.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
That's a
This
gas
summer,
answer.
I like that.
I get to see like some family. I get to go
Nice.
back up to Jersey, visit some
Nice.
friends,
Nice.
and I am so
Good,
looking
dude.
forward to just like chilling for a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'll probably take gigs as they come my way. I
It's
still
like,
have
it's like
some.
a mental break you need.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah,
small
yeah.
little mental break.
So I'm doing nothing. You can follow me at Somebody's Gun. I'll tweet some like random stuff, but
Yeah.
don't expect anything big.
And then
Cool
the
enough.
final question is, if you were to give the audience one piece of advice, whether it be Fortnite related or casting related or just life in general, what would it be?
Be genuine. Like it's helped me a ton just being who I am.
Mm.
That's why I get hired to do gigs. It's because the same person you're talking to today is the same person that's on a broadcast, is the same person that talks to the people behind the
seem very
scenes.
straightforward. So
I am who I am, and trying to hide that would make me worse at my job. And you know, it's not something that's good in all jobs. Working in sales, there's a lot of people that aren't genuine, try and screw you over.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I like being who I am. It's something that I don't have to look back at the end of the day and question the decisions I make, because I'm comfortable with what I'm doing at the moment.
Well, and it gets you what you deserve, right? For better or for worse. I think that, you know, it's like if you're genuine and you don't get, because I've talked about this in streaming, I think the people who pretend to be someone else or try and put on this face, like it catches up to you, because you know it's not who you are, and you get what you deserve at the end of the day. I think if you're being genuine, if you aren't getting what you want out of it, maybe you need to take a look at who you are as a person. But yeah, I love that answer. Yeah, be genuine. I mean, Lash kind of talked about a lot of the same stuff in his version of this answer as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another installment of the GhostComms podcast. This was Somebody's Gun. Go ahead and follow his Twitter. We'll have his stuff linked in the description as well. Comment down below who you want to see, anything that you agreed or disagree with, obviously in a civil manner, please. Like, subscribe if you like what we're doing. If I already said, comment down below who you want to see next. I think I did. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.
Hey, everybody.